Jain students, we are doing a lecture series of class 10th geography, and the chapter name is agriculture. This is the part 3 of this lecture series, and in this lecture we will study about intensive farming. Now, in the previous lectures we studied what agriculture is, what is the importance of agriculture in our lives, and in the second part we studied about the primitive subsistence farming. In this lecture we are going to deal with intensive subsistence farming. So let's begin. This type of farming is mainly practiced in the areas of high population pressure. It means that those areas, those states where there is a large population, and therefore we need a lot of agricultural product to support this population. In those areas, we do intensive subsistence farming. It is basically a labor intensive technique. It means that many a times we don't see much of the technology being used in these farms, and the primary source of labor is the manual labor. And for more production, as we have discussed, that there is a large population and we need to support this large population with a limited amount of agricultural fields available. So there's a need of biochemical inputs to produce more products on the limited areas. And also we need some artificial irrigation facilities. We cannot depend on the rainwater for irrigation. So we have to install tube wells, and we have to dig up the wells, or the government can also help you with making some canals through your fields. So these are some extra irrigation facilities that need to be available for intensive subsistence farming. And this all is done to obtain higher production so that a large population can be supported. Though the right of inheritance leading to division of land among successive generations and have rendered landholding sizes uneconomical, the farmers continue to take maximum output from the limited land in the absence of alternative source of livelihood. We know that more than 55% of the population in India is engaged in farming activities, and there is a system of right of inheritance where the property, the field of a parent is divided among the children, and thereby it leads to division of a large agricultural field into smaller parts, which becomes very uneconomical. You cannot grow a lot of agricultural product on a small patch of land. But if it is a bigger size, then you can grow obviously more of the agricultural products. So this makes it uneconomical, as discussed in the slide. And still, because they have a family to support, these small farmers also try to take out more as possible. So they use biochemical inputs and other irrigation methods for proper agriculture. This leads to enormous pressure on agricultural land, and almost 12% of the world farmland is in India, as you know. So now let's see some features of the intensive subsistence farming. It basically aims at maximum possible production, as we discussed in the previous slide also, that there are small patches of land and the farmers do need to take out the maximum possible production from this farmland, and it caters to the need of the farmer's family, and if there are any surplus, then they can also sell it in the local markets. Small land holdings are there, as discussed, due to the right of inheritance. There are now small land holdings, and in the further generations they will be subdivided and they will become more smaller. Preliminary mechanization means there are no very heavy machines being used in this kind of farming, but starting machinery requirements like tractors and small machines can be used for cultivation, capable of raising one crop a year. But you can use in your exam 2 crops in a year, because intensive subsistence farming में 2 crops भी की जा सकते हैं. Practiced in thickly populated regions, as discussed, that there are large populations. If there are large populations, then this intensive subsistence farming has to be practiced. And in India, if you talk, then Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, and parts of Rajasthan are the areas where we see this kind of farming techniques being practiced by the farmers. And the main crops that are produced wheat, rice, millets, etc. तो जैसा कि हम लोगों ने अभी डिस्कस किया, इंटेंसिव सब्सिस्टेंस फार्मिंग बेसिकली हमारी एक ऐसी फार्मिंग प्रैक्टिस है जहाँ पर कि हम लोग देखते हैं कि ये उन एरियाज़ में प्रैक्टिस की जाती है जहाँ पर लार्ज पॉपुलेशंस हैं, यानी कि पॉपुलेशन प्रेशर जो है वो लैंड के ऊपर ज़्यादा है। लैंड तो लिमिटेड ही है, लेकिन जो पॉपुलेशन हमें उसमें से सपोर्ट करनी है, जो लोग एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं फूड उस फार्म लैंड से, वो काफ़ी ज़्यादा है। तो इसलिए हमें उस लिमिटेड एरिया ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर लैंड पर ही ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा प्रोडक्शन करने की ज़रूरत पड़ती है। ये फार्मिंग की टेक्निक लेबर इंटेंसिव होती है। इसका मतलब ये कि यहाँ पर मशीनों का यूज़ जो होता है वो बहुत कम होता है। हालांकि कुछ प्रिलिमिनरी मशीनें जैसे कि ट्रैक्टर्स वगैरह यूज़ किए जाते हैं, लेकिन बहुत बड़ी मशीनें जैसे कि हम लोग कमर्शियल फार्मिंग में आगे पढ़ेंगे, थ्रेशर्स भी होते हैं, हार्वेस्टर्स भी होते हैं, और बहुत से और भी मशीनें होती हैं जो फार्मिंग में यूज़ की जाती हैं। वहाँ पर ऐसी ज़्यादा सोफिस्टिकेटेड मशीन्स का यूज़ नहीं किया जाता है। उसके बाद राइट ऑफ इनहेरिटेंस की वजह से जो लैंड है वो काफ़ी ज़्यादा डिवाइडेड हो चुके हैं, और अब जो फार्मर्स हैं उनके पास लैंड होल्डिंग्स जो हैं वो काफ़ी स्मॉल साइज़ की हैं। राइट ऑफ इनहेरिटेंस का मतलब ये होता है कि किसी पेरेंट्स की जो प्रॉपर्टी होती है वो उनके चिल्ड्रंस में डिवाइड हो जाती है, जिसकी वजह से वो उसके साइज जो होते हैं वो कम हो जाते हैं। सपोज इफ देयर इज अ फार्मर एक्स जिसकी की 10 एकड़ की ज़मीन है और उसके 5 बेटे हैं, तो आगे आने वाली जनरेशन के लिए सारे बच्चों को 2-2 एकड़ की ज़मीनें ही मिलेंगी, और जब उनके बच्चे होंगे तो फर्दर इट विल बी अगेन सब डिवाइडेड, और इस तरह से करते करते हमारे यहाँ जो अब लैंड साइजेस हैं, लैंड होल्डिंग्स है किसानों के पास, वो काफ़ी छोटे होते हैं। इससे एक नुकसान ये होता है कि यहाँ पर अनइकोनॉमिकल हो जाता है, यानी कि जितना इन्वेस्टमेंट होता है वो ज़्यादा लगता है, और उसके रिस्पॉन्स में जो प्रोडक्शन होता है वो कंपेरेटिवली कम हो जाता है। जबकि अगर बड़े लैंड होल्डिंग्स पर इस प्रैक्टिस को किया जाए फार्मिंग को, तो कम इन्वेस्टमेंट में ज़्यादा प्रोडक्शन किया जा सकता है। इसीलिए लिखा हुआ है दैट ड्यू टू द राइट ऑफ इनहेरिटेंस द लैंड साइज हैव बिकम स्मॉल एंड दे आर नाउ अनइकोनॉमिकल। फिर भी अब फार्म्स हैं तो प्रोडक्शन तो करना ही है, इसलिए किसान अभी भी कोशिश करता है कि मैक्सिमम आउटपुट वहाँ से निकाला जा सके उस लिमिटेड फार्मलैंड से, और इसीलिए वो ऑल्टरनेटिव, क्योंकि उसके पास ऑल्टरनेटिव सोर्सेज ऑफ लाइवलीहुड नहीं है, कोई नौकरी नहीं है शहर में, फैक्ट्री में, किसी और जगह, तो वो उसको वही करना है, फार्मिंग ही करनी है। तो वहाँ पर वो फिर बायोकेमिकल्स का यूज़ करके और एक्स्ट्रा इरिगेशन फैसिलिटीज़ को यूज़ करके और ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा प्रोडक्शन करने की कोशिश करता है। इंटेंसिव के कुछ और भी फीचर्स लिखे हुए हैं यहाँ पर, जैसे कि हम लोगों ने पहले भी डिस्कस किया कि ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा प्रोडक्शन एक लिमिटेड फार्मलैंड से ऑब्टेन करने की कोशिश की जाती है। मेन पर्पस, क्योंकि हम सब्सिस्टेंस बोल रहे हैं, बीच में सब्सिस्टेंस टर्म आ रहा है, और हमने पढ़ा हुआ है कि सब्सिस्टेंस का मतलब होता है फॉर सपोर्टिंग ओन फैमिली। तो यहाँ पर फार्मर अपनी फैमिली के लिए प्राइमरली प्रोड्यूस करता है, बट इफ देयर आर एनी सरप्लस प्रोडक्ट्स, अगर कुछ बचता है एक्स्ट्रा, तो उसको वो मार्केट में सेल भी करता है। लोकल मार्केट वर्ड यहाँ लिखा हुआ है, ये लोकल मार्केट इंपॉर्टेंट है बिकॉज आसपास की मार्केट में ही बेचा जाता है इंटेंसिव फार्मिंग के जो प्रोडक्ट्स होते हैं, और बाहर मार्केट्स में नहीं बेचा जाता है, वो केवल कमर्शियल में हम लोग देखेंगे फीचर्स में होता है। तो लोकल मार्केट्स में बेच देते हैं अगर फैमिली को सपोर्ट करने के बाद कुछ एक्स्ट्रा बचता है तो। स्मॉल लैंड होल्डिंग्स होते हैं, हमने पहले ही पढ़ा है, और कुछ प्रिलिमिनरी मशीनें यूज की जाते हैं। केवल एक क्रॉप ही साल भर में ग्रो करते हैं जनरली फार्मर्स, लेकिन क्योंकि आपकी बुक में ऐसा स्टेटमेंट नहीं लिखा हुआ है, तो आप यहाँ पर कम से कम 2 क्रॉप्स जरूर लिखेंगे, या तो ये पॉइंट को आप एग्जाम में छोड़ देंगे। प्रैक्टिस इन थिकली पॉपुलेटेड रीजन्स, जैसे पहले डिस्कस कर चुके हैं हम लोग कि पॉपुलेशन जहाँ ज़्यादा होती है, लैंड पर प्रेशर ज़्यादा होता है पॉपुलेशन को सपोर्ट करने का, उन जगहों पर इंटेंसिव फार्मिंग की जाती है। इंडिया की अगर बात करें तो पंजाब, उत्तर प्रदेश, मध्य प्रदेश और राजस्थान के कुछ हिस्सों में हम इस तरह की इंटेंसिव फार्मिंग को देखते हैं। जो क्रॉप्स ज़्यादातर ग्रो की जाती हैं, दीज आर व्हीट, राइस, मिलेट्स etc., which are primarily grown on intensive subsistence farmland. Okay, thank you students. Now you have a video to watch. Watch it carefully and I hope you will learn something. If you have any doubts regarding this lecture, you can ask during the live sessions. Thank you students, and Jai Narayan.
Intensive farming is an agricultural intensification and mechanization system that aims to maximize yields from available land through various means such as heavy use of pesticides and chemical fertilizers.
But what does this really mean?
Intensive farming is a method of farming which aims to produce the largest amount of produce from the smallest amount of land by any means necessary. This includes factory farming for eggs and meat.
We use this type of farming all the time. In fact, most commercial agriculture uses an intensive farming method.
This means that most of the meat, eggs, dairy, fruit and vegetables in our supermarkets are currently produced through intensive farming. We use this type of farming so much because throughout the world we currently have a very high demand for food and produce due to overpopulation, so we need to produce more food in order to feed everyone. In 2015, around 795 million people went undernourished globally. However, this number had dropped around 167 million over the decade before, partly due to more efforts, money and resources being put towards helping those in need, as well as higher levels of food security.
Our attitudes towards convenience has also encouraged this method of farming, as we always expect the produce we want to be in the supermarket when we want it, meaning farmers have to produce more food quicker in order to keep up with the demand.
Chemical fertilizers and pesticides are often used in large amounts in intensive farming methods. These fertilizers are bad for water and soil as they can be toxic, contaminate crops, and can even be carcinogenic. A crop which commonly uses many of these fertilizers is cotton. Although it's only grown on 2.5% of the world's agricultural land, it consumes 16% of all the insecticides and 6 to 8% of all herbicides used worldwide. These pesticides are washed out of soils and pollute rivers and groundwater. Another problem with intensively farmed crops such as cotton is that they use a huge amount of water to produce a relatively small yield, and this can have a devastating effect on the natural environment of an area if all the water is used in irrigating crops. For example, Lake Aral or the Aral Sea between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan was once used to irrigate cotton crops and has almost dried up because of this.
This method of farming also produces lower quality produce. It is bad for the soil quality as it uses up all the natural nutrients and disrupts the ecosystem. Intensive farming is also a cause of habitat destruction as rainforests are destroyed to make room for farming land.
Alternate methods of farming which could be used to phase out large-scale intensive farming include organic farming, which produces good quality food without using any chemical fertilizer or pesticides. This helps reduce diseases and lowers the environmental impact. Hydroponics is another method of farming which could be used, where plants are grown not in the soil but in water containing dissolved nutrients in greenhouses. This technique eradicates diseases caused by soil-living organisms, but the plants need constant support and supervision, and it is grown in areas where there is no soil.
Subsistence farming, which is growing the amount of food which is needed to sustain a family, community, or individual, also aids in boycotting intensive farming. This can be done in community gardens or home veggie gardens. The Bridgewater Community Centre, Denali Tasman House, Geeston Community Centre, Risdon Vale Neighbourhood House and West Moona Community House are just some of the many community gardens in South Tassie. Eating less meat or taking on initiatives such as Meat-Free Monday or even vegetarianism lowers the demand for large amounts of meat to be produced and is more economically friendly to individuals and families to eat less meat.
An Australian campaign which has been very successful in eliminating factory farming methods of intensive farming is the Make It Possible campaign, which was advertised in 2012. Some effects of this campaign include Coles no longer selling home brands, caged eggs or pork products from suppliers who confine mother pigs in pregnant sow crates. Woolworths committing to phase out all caged eggs from sale, with Woolworths ACT already 100% cage-free. Cruel practices such as confining pregnant mother pigs in tiny crates, confining hens in battery cages, and de-beaking baby chicks are all now illegal in the ACT. And many fast food companies, including McDonald's and Subways, pledging to end their use of caged eggs. Intensive fish farming in coastal areas is one of the greatest threats to Tasmania's marine value. In 1983, 53 tons of fish were farmed a year, and in September 1st, 2017, this number reached 40,000, which is estimated to double by 2030. The main damage done to the environment is because the industry doesn't bother to capture the waste that settles on the seafloor. This waste produce being uneaten fish food, fish feces and urine, and organic matter from net cleaning. These irreversible deformities were first recorded in the 1960s with no found cause. More than 1,000 farmed fish were examined in Norway, Chile, Scotland, Canada, and Australia. They believe that this deformity is linked to the fish's fast growth rate. This is a welfare issue for fish farmers. The freedom the fish are entitled to are the freedom from hunger or thirst, freedom from discomfort, freedom from pain, injury, or disease, freedom to express most normal behavior, and freedom from distress. Whilst this isn't usually a problem, this is a problem where farmed salmon are released into the wild in a restocking program. Auditory cues are important for fish. They use it to communicate and detect the presence of predators. They also use it to navigate in their natural environment and discover new habitats or food. Stocking rivers with hearing-impaired fish may be throwing money and resources into the sea.
Another side effect of intensive fish farming is that the fish don't get the correct nutrients that they need and therefore don't look as appealing. For example, salmon, when caught in the wild, is bright pink in colour, and the flesh is pink as well when we cook it to eat it. However, farmed salmon is usually grey in colour because they don't share the same diet as wild salmon and don't turn pink, so we dye the salmon to make it look more appealing to the consumers.